I'm glad you're here to listen to wonderful program coming to you. And please don't forget to subscribe or give us thumbs up. Thank you for watching. Hello, welcome again to Dr. Mad Show. Is Kenya's president becoming a dictator? He recently had a conversation where he had to say that he did not get the presidential ceremonial sword to cut vegetables with. What does that mean? You know, a presidential sword, you can see
Samuel Ruto sasa atakabidhiwa kitara cha kijeshi, yani presidential ceremonial sword. Kitara hiki kimetengenezwa kwa mpini wa chuma cha pua ama stainless steel. Halikadhalika ncha yake imepambwa kwa dhahabu. Kitara hiki kinadhihirisha kudhibiti nchi na ulinzi wake. Kwa kawaida kitara hiki ukabidhiwa rais anayechukua hatamu ya uongozi, kuashiria uhamisho wa mamlaka na usimamizi wa vyombo vya dola. Kama ilivyo kawaida kama kamanda wa kijeshi waendapo vitani ukibeba kitara, kuashiria wao ndio wanatoa amri. Hivyo basi, kwa kukabidhiwa kitara hiki, Mheshimiwa Rais Daktari William Samoei Ruto anakuwa kirasmi ndiye amiri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi ya ulinzi ya Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Tumshangilie Mheshimiwa Rais kwa makofi anapopokea kitara hichi. Na ni dhahiri shahiri kwamba anakuwa amiri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi yote ya ulinzi ya Kenya.
Even an opposition. There is no opposition in Kenya right now. The reason being that the country, members of parliament, all of them seems to be operating from the same. Let me hear. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think before we came in, one of the things we are talking about right now is Kenya sliding into a dictatorship. There are so many things which have happened, and I just played a video when the president was getting the presidential ceremonial sword, which he recently said that he was not given that sword to cut vegetables. And it's ceremonial. What did you hear? I was saying, what does he mean like that?
Yeah, I listened to him keenly when he was actually somewhere in Kisii the other day. And obviously he was very irritated that some people can be an hindrance to his policies that he wants to implement, because they are challenging him. And maybe I want to believe that he's using the symbol of authority to scare away those who are challenging him. And I want to believe that he does not mean to crush them as he meant, using the symbol of authority. And even before we discuss what he said, I think you may have said this, that we need to back up a little bit and understand what does that sword mean during the inauguration. So if you go back to the history of it, in 1963, when Kenya attained internal independence, internal rule, Prince Andrew Phillips was the one who handed over that sword along with the then constitution to the late Musee Jomo Kenyatta to symbolize that authority had shifted from the Queen to the Prime Minister at the time. So those the sword and the constitution are symbols of authority. The sword is a symbol of authority, and the constitution given to the incoming leader of a nation is a symbol that tells you that this nation that you have been given to is governed by the rule of law contained in that constitution. And the sword that he is given is to defend that constitution and the borders, not against the enemies within, and the borders of the nation. So those are the two things that people must know. The sword is a symbol of authority, and the authority has been given is to govern the nation and defend it from external aggression. Using that sword, which is a symbol of authority that has been given. And that symbol of authority is given to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And that he will use the document, which in this case is defined as a constitution, to govern the nation. And he is not above that constitution. He's also governed by that constitution. So those are the two symbols that he was given during the inauguration that has been used over the last 60 years since Kenya attained independence.
So then I really appreciated that the way you have defined it, and which means the sword represents that you are given authority, but then it carries also the responsibility to defend the constitution, to abide by the constitution. Now, when a Kenyan is aggrieved and goes to court, if something is not right, do you want to threaten them not to go to court because that is their constitutional right?
Absolutely not, because we have three arms of the government, and we all know that without the other, governing that nation will be a little challenging, and it won't even happen. Because when you are aggrieved, the next very good step to do is to go to the court to complete what we call arbitration. So in this case, when a Kenyan feels like the government's policies are contrary to what the constitution says or the rules of the parliamentary enacted legislation is saying, then the judiciary is supposed to interpret for everybody. And therefore, that's what we call the rule of law. So for President Ruto to say that I'm going to crash, honestly, I'm not persuaded that he meant to bring that physical sword that he was given. I know he was saying that I've been given the authority to govern you and I'll crush you. Yet that is really contrary to what the instruments of power means, to govern using the rule of law.
So are we wrong to say, because if we back, it means what it says. You remember the case of Rai, the one who had a case against Mumias' sugar company. And he said this, Mamba ni matatu. Those people who are holding the Mumias issue in court. Mamba ni matatu. Atoe kesi kotini. Ame Kenya. Ama anse safari kwenda mbinguni. That was the ultimatum. And then we saw people hijack. Rai was hijacked. Later on was released. But he had to withdraw the cases. What are the chances that he will not pressurize these people the way Rai did?
And like I said, I'm not persuaded that he really meant, because I know the group that actually went to court to challenge some of his policies, especially the housing levy, 1.5% that he's levying on Kenyans. They rightly went to court when they felt aggrieved. And if he's going to really use the sword, as he says, to scare people away, there are millions of Kenyans who are not happy with that levy. So I don't know if he has enough power, because he has been, remember, the power he has is derived from the people he's trying to slice. they can easily take away that power, and he won't have that sword.
Well,
so
he has actually killed the opposition. You know, we really don't have opposition in parliament. Have you had any really strong opposition other than Raila, who's outside, who is the only person who will talk something? Members of parliament are already bored, which I think is a sign that he's a dictator. He's sliding to dictatorship.
Maybe we can go back to the history of his ascension to power. If you go back to the time he first came to the limelight in the KANU 92 era, he served one of the most powerful men on the continent of Africa at the time, whose tendencies were very dictatorial. So for President Ruto to act as one, he doesn't know that he's a dictator at all, because that's what he grew up knowing, that a president acts this way. The late President Moi was really very powerful in a manner that if you went contrary to his word, you probably would find yourself on the wrong side of the law. We know how many people he put into detention without trial, and hundreds others were really beaten up during the run up to the Party democracy in 1990. So yes, Ruto grew up and as a student of politics, and he is still a good student of the late Moi. So are you surprised that he's behaving that way? I am not myself.
But then you see, Moi used the constitution we had. This is what we changed, and we don't expect this after with the new constitution, with the Bill of Rights and things enshrined in a new constitution, that the president is behaving that, and not even parliament is asking about it, which means we don't have opposition. He can get it. So recently you had Arwar Kimorel Dam case was dismissed. And
yeah, you know, I think we still are kind of dusting ourselves from the dust of the dictatorship of Moi, and people have not really realized that the power is in their hands when they, especially when we began the new dawn on the new era of the 2010 constitution, where the Bill of Rights are very prominent in that new constitution. But again, the constitution is as good as the people who are enforcing it, because the executive is supposed to enforce the rule of law, and he was given that constitution to enforce and use and govern using the rule of law. He's not. So to scare people like he did the other day in I think in Kisii at Mosojo, that those of you who are coming between me and my goals, my policies, I'm gonna slice you. Hopefully, okay. I saw the other day Okiya Matata went to, is it Okiya Matata? Okiya Matata.
Yeah, he went to fight a case against Ruto, and they went to Mosojo police station. He was told to go to Nyanjwa.
Yeah.
Police could not even take a statement of a citizen who is grieving a grieved person. Don't you think everybody is scared? If you look at that.
I think, you know, the Kenyans are very good to rule and to govern, but as you have the history of Kenyans, when really pushed to the corner, they know how to fight back. They will fight back, and when they fight back, they really fight back very hard. President Ruto is very, very smart. He knows how to change tact when needed. He's frustrated that his goals and policies are not moving at the speed he expected. He's frustrated that the economy that he framed the previous regime is not picking up as he expected. The other day, as you noticed, maybe from his national address to the nation with the round table, he completely switched from framing the previous regime's tax policy, saying that the gas was expensive. Petrol was expensive because the previous regime did not know. You remember the campaign trail? Now he's saying that he has no control over it. It's not him who has control over it. Yet we know for sure that 42% of what people pay at the pump is actually tax to the government of Kenya. So they do actually have power, and they control how much it costs somebody at the pump, because they tax it, and they tax it heavily. So for the president to say that he has no power, it means that he's abdicating his responsibility to govern, and therefore provide a comfortable, prosperous life for Kenyans.
Yeah, because the taxes, we are the heavily tax, actually is around 46% of what the people pay on the pump is for taxes, which he has loaded them, and nobody's doing that. He had it to make sure that thing has passed. And what you say about, you see, the control of budget, Dr. Nyakang, was hounded to court. Were they not the scare tactics of a dictator that he wanted to scare Nyakang from speaking?
You know, the good news or the bad news is, let's start with the bad news and the good news. The good news is you can scare one person and they retreat. But the good news is that you cannot scare 50 million Kenyans to a cocoon and they go and hide. You'll think they have gone raw, but when they come back, they sweep you off. Yes, that tactic was a little off the mark of the charts, and I think they have let her go. That's a lady who is doing her job. And I was looking at the consolidated budget implementation reviews from the Office of the Controller of Budget. They are very thorough. I mean, she does a good job, and they give very good recommendations, not only to the national government, but also to the county governments on what they need to do to implement the budgets once they have formulated and passed those policies in the form of the financial statements.
Yeah. No, like for example, I saw, maybe you've seen it in social media. That is a list of people in different parastatus. That list, head of the civil service, I mean, they are literally from one ethnic community. That's Ruto's ethnic community. All of them have been listed there. Is that really a shared government as they claim?
You know, the 2010 Constitution, when it was inaugurated and put in place to govern the people of Kenya, it's very clear that the distribution of wealth and positions should reflect the diversity of Kenya. And is it reflecting the diversity of Kenya as we speak, the current government? That's a really huge subject of debate. So many corners of Kenya are not happy with the current government. And are we surprised, though, those who have seen and really followed his life in politics and his life in power as first as a member of parliament, then as a minister in the first government of Muse Moi and then Kibaki, and then later on in the first presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta? Remember, it was a shared government. They had a 50-50 shared responsibility in that government. He was given 50% of the cabinet, and we all know that the 50% came from one region. So I'm not surprised that he continues to do the same thing. So Kenyans woke up very early in the morning last year, August, knowing fully well who they were electing. So are we going to complain? Absolutely, yes. But are we surprised? No, we're not, because that is his history. He has a history to it.
That is that is who he is. Now,
absolutely.
What is if you look at what is the impact of his behavior? What do you think will be an impact for the country?
You know, the easiest people to govern are people whose life is easier. They have enough food on their table, on their kitchen tables. Those are the easiest people to govern. But when there is no food in people's homes, when people are struggling every day, when they cannot afford the most basic needs, food, clothing, transport, and on, taking their children to school, that is going to be very difficult. So the impact is pretty soon, and very soon, we are going to start seeing a lot of lawlessness. And when we see lawlessness, there is going to be a lot of animosity, and people will start. Even now, I think Kenyans are not very happy with the direction the government is taking, the country is taking right now. So when you see poverty and people cannot even afford the very basic things, three things will occur. One, lawlessness, meaning that people will not respect other people's property. The few who have will be forced either to share, and people will come for them. In other words, we'll start seeing an uptick of petty thieves who are climbing over people's fences to go get and find food, breaking the law. Two, we're going to see an uptick. There is corruption, yes, but we're going to see even more of what we have never seen. Corruption at the highest levels that we have never seen. Because there's no single service you're going to get without paying a bribe. So this is going to make even life more harder for those who don't have, and therefore government services are going to be almost impossible to get. And finally, unless the people who were elected and representing the people, either the county assembly or at the national government in parliament that's put in the national assembly and the Senate, unless they rise up and speak on behalf of the people, we probably won't go that far. We might see people on the streets again.
So how do you look at investor confidence in a country where we are at the moment?
That's a good question. The other day, a friend of mine sent a clip of a company that has been operating in Kenya over the last 60 years that they were falling up and moving on to a different region. There's Smith Craig, Pisham, and the Grasco, something that has to do with drug and production of drugs, pharmaceutical. Just as an example that most of the companies that have existed in Kenya for years are finding the environment very unfriendly. You know, the taxes that have been put in place, the financial policy statement that they put in place in June is driving away a lot of businesses. Number two, the cases that were dropped, the corruption cases that were dropped immediately this government came into place, really put a lot of questions to the investors. They have no confidence in the judiciary, number one. They have no confidence in the government, that is the executive, to enforce the rule of law, and therefore they are fleeing in numbers. So one of the reasons why the Kenya shilling is riding in a free fall, someone said calling it free fall, as indeed it is because people are running away, investors are running away with their dollars in droves from Kenya. So they have no confidence in the present regime.
Yeah, that's very true. Recently, I had featured one country, Argentina, which got a new president. But you know, the funny thing is that when he took over, investors are running to invest in Argentina because he kept his campaign promise. He's reducing the wastage in the government. He reduced the cabinet ministries from 18 to 9. And he has made his promise to do away with some social programs. And now investor confidence has gone up. But what we saw in Kenya, it was the opposite. Investors were leaving, which, like all of those cases, as you said, when corruption cases just fall out. And this is where they are now using the DPP. They make sure that the DPP produces shoddy evidence to the courts. And as the courts, they said, we can't do anything unless you give us concrete evidence. And the government, the DPP is supposed to produce that in court. And that is how most of those cases are falling away. As much as we blame the courts, the judge cannot rule on speculation. The judge needs evidence. And how can we, what can you recommend people to do so that the DPP is accountable to doing investigation?
You know, in the 2010 constitution, which really established and strengthened that office to make it what we may call independent office, one of the independent constitutional officers, is it really independent? Absolutely not. Because as soon as the current, even the previous one, who was in office when the regime changed, he started singing the tune of the sitting president.
Yeah.
And he was singing the tune of the previous president when he was there. So it's a pity that people are given power, because that constitutional office is very powerful. They are not using it. They're using it to serve not the Kenyan people, but to serve those in power, which is really a pity.
Yeah.
What can Kenyans do? Like I said, we are sliding into anarchy, very slowly into anarchy. When you realize that the courts cannot really be a place for arbitration, the courts will not be a place for justice, the courts are not a place where you can be shielded from injustices, people are going to take the law into their own hands. And that's not what we want to do. That's why investors are running away. They know there's nothing they can do. But for Kenyans, they have no place to run to. They're not running away. That's our country. They are not running away. So they are going to defend themselves instead of bringing those cases to court. Just imagine you are a Kenyan investor and you have a case that you want arbitration by the courts. Then you realize the government, which is supposed to really enforce criminals who are taking away your property, they drop off those cases, and then what do you do? Because they are taking away your livelihood. Chances are you start seeing murder cases going up. That's what some of those you hear as mysteriously so and so has been killed, which is not what we want.
We are seeing so many cases of land disputes which have been in Kenya, and this is one of the issues making people even very careful not to invest in land in Kenya, because how would somebody have got the document which look genuine from the Minister of Lands, and then later on his story, no, those are fake? What can the government do so that to increase investor confidence when people are buying land?
You know, the Ministry of Land is where most of those cartels are, and that's where the problem in Kenya actually lies, because land is a source of capital itself. And unless we really clean up that ministry and make sure that the titles that people hold are clean and genuine, because some titles, they are issued by the Ministry of Lands.
Yeah.
You are paying land rates to the local authorities or to the national government for years and years, and then thereafter you are told, oops, this is another genuine title. Yet the government authorities have been receiving land rates from you. They issued that title. Maybe they issued 2 titles for the same property, which is really a pity. So again, as much as we blame the current regime, I think Kenyans need to stand up and look at themselves in the mirror, especially those in the lands ministry, and know that they are also not only part of the problem, they are really a big problem.
Yeah, but nobody seems not to do. We have not seen even the Ministry of Land officials being accountable for anything. They go free, and even when they say that they're going to digitalize, we don't know how much they did.
The digitalizing they did, and when they realize that the source of their corruption money, when you digitalize, is going away, they sabotage those good, efficient infrastructure that was put in place. So that's why I'm saying just Kenyans are Kenyans. They know how to sabotage those things that are going to make things and services more efficient.
Well, one of the things we have to say, President William Ruto is a very intelligent president. I mean, I am proud of him even when I saw he was in India, when he was being interviewed in India. Very eloquent and gives great ideas. I mean, I was proud of him, the way he's saying, but he needs to walk the talk at home, because when he's out there, he talks great things. So if he can turn like this idea of using the presidential ceremonial sword, that is a wrong message he sent. but he will need to give an olive branch, but he needs really to fight. If he can tell me he wants to carry that sword to fight corruption and those cartels, I would agree. But not when he's just want to fight the citizens of the country who wants to go to court.
Yeah, we are almost 1.5 years into his presidency. And have you had any high-profile cases of corruption except those that are being dropped?
None.
Yeah, those that are being dropped is what we're hearing. So, does it mean there's no corruption going on? Your guess is as good as mine.
A lot. Even the one recently about the gas, the petrol from.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very it's very interesting because the big question is what can they do? That's what can the Kenyans do?
Yeah.
What can the Kenyans do? That's the big question.
Well, they need to walk up. They need to fight for their right. That's what they got. And that's what people like Okiya Mutata went to court, and he was trying to get justice. But then they could not allow Okiya Mutata to even file a report. Because he cannot go to court, he needed to file a criminal report because he was being threatened. His life is in danger.
Yeah, okay. Okiya Mutata will go into history as a person who has really remained in the limelight fighting for Kenyans, not just from the streets, but in the courts overall. I think if Kenyans can support people like Mutata, Okiya, then if we have a few of those who are standing up against what we call dictatorial tendencies, we don't want people to lose hope in the institutions, to have no faith in the institutions of enforcement, especially the enforcement of the law, like the police and the DPP and the judiciary. We don't want people to lose that faith, because if they lose it, then we have no country. It's anarchy.
Yeah. So anyway, our time is over here, and really, what is your last word about Kenya sliding to dictatorship?
Here's what it is. The Constitution is very clear about the limitations of the executive and the presidency. So what I would want Kenyans to do is to stand up, and every time it happens, let them fight back. Fight back by going to the courts, fight back by going to the institutions that are supposed to protect them, the ombudsman, fight back by going to the police stations to report cases of civil or criminal suspicions, like cases like being threatened by the president himself, and really holding him accountable. It's unfortunate, because I want to take a minute here to refer back to the most recent interview that the president had in State House, where somehow he appeared to be very passionate, but he was giving and chatting and churning out numbers that were completely, totally off the charts, and they were not true. When you have a president who rise from straight up and looking at you, it's unbelievable. We need to have people to hold him accountable and continue doing so, because he himself says that I need to be held accountable.
Yeah, but without an official position right now, I wonder who will hold him accountable, because even at the police, you are saying they fear to take a report against the president, they will be fired the next day. So Okiya Mutata could not report that to anybody. What do you think if Okiya Mutata could not report? Why would a common citizen go to report?
Yeah, that's
above the law.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So thank you so much. We don't want to go back to the 80s and 90s, early 90s.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay.